Dr. K, you just released a brand new book called Dark Calories: How Vegetable Oils Destroy Our Health and How to Get It Back. I just read the book. It's an incredible book, which we're going to take a deep dive into today. You make the case that the rise of chronic disease that we see year after year, decade after decade, are a result from these vegetable oils that have been pushed into our food supply. You even say these vegetable oils are more inflammatory than processed sugar. In your book, you have research suggesting that a 5 ounce serving of French fries cooked in vegetable oils contains the same carcinogens you'd get from smoking 20 to 25 cigarettes. Can you explain how these vegetable oils create so much inflammation and chronic disease?
Absolutely. Vegetable oils prevent your cells from providing you with the energy that makes you feel good and avoid disease. Vegetable oils have a unique chemistry to them, different than the kinds of fats that humanity used to eat before the industrial era. Vegetable oils like soy, corn, canola, they are industrial products, and the fatty acids within them are different and detrimental to our health because they are unstable in the presence of oxygen. What does that mean? That means that they react with oxygen and the energy becomes uncontrollable. Oxygen is a high energy molecule. We need it to generate energy in our cells, but our cells have to control the energy, because without being able to control energy, free radicals fly around in our cells. We develop this state of cellular imbalance called oxidative stress. And that is the root cause of inflammation and cellular degeneration that leads to inflammatory disease and the degenerative diseases that age us prematurely. So it comes down to understanding energy. And it's actually, why is a doctor talking about energy? Right? I don't mean metaphysical energy. I mean literally the energy within chemical bonds. And I would never have understood this like concept at all had I not just loved chemistry as an undergrad. And actually, I went into biochemistry as a PhD student at Cornell University because I had nothing to do with medicine. At the time, I wanted to invent microbes that could digest plastic, right? Because plastic is a chemical that is causing problems. Now it's causing even more problems than it used to.
Yeah.
So I loved chemistry, and truly understanding how the body works um, comes down to understanding the chemistry of what keeps us alive, and that is energy. Just think about how good you feel when you wake up and you feel like you had a good night's sleep and you're like full of energy when you start your day. It changes your day. Like it changes your mindset because you're like, I can take on anything. I can do the stuff I need to do. This no problem. Life is easy. Life is good. So, like, just intuitively, we always talk about like energy as being part of health, but medicine has not connected this. I mean, modern, Western medicine, I'm pretty sure that Eastern medicine talks about energy quite a bit, like energy flow and chi and stuff like that, but it's metaphysical. It's not quite chemical. But it turns out they were right. And so what I've done is just put the chemistry to this intuitive idea that Eastern medicine has been talking about is actually does boil down to energy. And when our diets are full of vegetable oils, we profoundly change how our body can handle energy. And that's what we're going to be talking about. Like, how does that all work? Because it's so important and so fascinating, and it's really not that complicated conceptually.
Yeah. Okay. Let's take a deep dive into that energy. You're right. I mean, that's what we want. We want to feel good. Of course, we want to look good, but feeling good is actually more important than just looking good. When we think about how our body produces energy, we know that we have these little batteries called the mitochondria. And it's interesting, Dr. Cate, because there's a lot of disagreement out there in the health space, vegan, carnivore, keto, a lot of back and forth. But I think most health experts would agree that healthy mitochondria are very important, regardless of how you get there, what diet or what plan. The mitochondria are the name of the game. They are responsible for about 90% of our energy production. So these vegetable oils, let's list them out right now for the listeners and the viewers. You call them the hateful eight. You've been calling them that for years. You even referenced that in your book. I love that. There's some cool graphics showing you exactly why they're so hateful and what they are and how to avoid them. So there are three C's, three S's, and two others, and I'll list them out, and then I'm going to ask you how they're disrupting the mitochondria. So the three C's are canola, corn, and cottonseed. Canola in the UK is referred to as rapeseed oil. And then we have soybean, sunflower, and safflower oil, and then rice bran oil and grapeseed oil. Did I get those correct?
Perfect. You are the first house that actually knew those by memory.
Yes, I've been saying it a lot. I preach your message a lot, Dr. Cate. So they're called, the classification of them are called vegetable oils and more accurately described as seed oils. What is happening when we consume them as it relates to the mitochondria and us being able to produce energy and burn fat and live a long, healthy life?
Yeah, so there's two layers to this. And the first layer is that when we have cooked our foods in these oils, because of the reactions with oxygen, the oils themselves, the fatty acids that they contain, called polyunsaturated fatty acids, which come in two categories, omega-3 and omega-6, which a lot of people are talking about now. Those will react with oxygen, but they will deteriorate into toxins, the serious toxins that you mentioned in the introduction, which are actual carcinogens that, the same stuff that you get when you smoke cigarettes. They belong to this category called alpha beta unsaturated aldehydes. And those are toxic to our mitochondria. Just a tiny amount that gets, if you have a cell on a petri dish, you can literally watch in real time, the cells start to die back. As if you're talking about a big cell, like a nerve cell, complex, nerve cells are very big and they have long, like tree-like branches, and you add just micromolar, which very tiny amounts of this stuff to slide, and you see that those long tendrils start to die back because they no longer have the energy to support themselves.
Wow.
You start to, and that is a consequence of how, also another thing that's happening is free radical cascades just harming the membranes. The cell membrane is also susceptible to attack by oxygen, and it's susceptible to toxins. And in fact, it's made out of polyunsaturates. And so our biology has spent a long time trying to protect our cell membranes, specifically the chemicals, polyunsaturates in our cell membranes, which are the wrapping around every single cell in our body. We have a lot of biological technology, like antioxidants and enzymes, that protect these delicate fatty acids from oxygen. But this gets us to the other layer of vegetable oil toxicity. Vegetable oils, when we consume them in the amounts that we are now, like 10, 15, 20, 30% of our daily calories, they deplete our body of these antioxidants. So even if we've never cooked with them, even if we didn't heat them and we just ate too much vegetable oil, it would also have toxicity. And so these two layers are a very important nuance that is currently missing from most of the conversation right now. I don't know what you personally have been talking about, but everyone else out there, I have not heard them really discussing these two elements, separate elements of toxicity. One is immediate, and you can feel it sometimes after you go out to eat. You might feel if you have a bunch of fried food, deep fried food being the worst of the worst in terms of generating these toxins, hence French fries being the analogy to cigarettes. You can, like, either the next day, some people say that they feel like their body's inflamed or they feel swollen, but some people feel it like within just a few minutes, because the toxins actually start causing inflammation in the digestive system, whether it's the esophagus or the stomach lining or the intestinal tract. But that's the immediate effect of the toxins that are generated in the food. And that's bad enough.
Right.
Right? But this second layer is what makes them so insidious, and what has made it very difficult for even myself to really understand how these things have been affecting us, because it's so slow and it doesn't really manifest until something has happened, which is kind of terrifying, which is it's changed the composition of our own human body fat. The body fat under our skin is now, the average person has an abnormal composition of it, where there's just too much polyunsaturates in there, and polyunsaturates can kill mitochondria. They are not meant to be the fuel for mitochondria. And so in one of the chapters, I have a graph showing a very important experiment that was done in Italy that showed that polyunsaturates kill mitochondria. And that means your cells cannot generate energy when your body fat has too much polyunsaturated fatty acid in there. And what does fuel our mitochondria are the types of fatty acids that medical science says we're supposed to limit in our diet and that are not good for us, and we're having too much, and they just don't get how these things fuel our bodies. That's the monounsaturated fatty acids and the saturated fatty acids. They are simply more stable. And so our bodies have evolved to use those as fuel. And when we so profoundly change our body fat, we are changing actually the ability of the largest organ in our body to function. And body fat is the largest organ in our body by size, right? A lot of people think about, well, muscle mass is, if you're healthy, actually your muscles will be more. But when you talk about the volume, since fat is bigger, larger, it is the biggest physically. Like if you could carve it all out and plop it on a table and plop your muscle, the pile of body fat would be larger.
Yeah, exactly. So this is so fascinating, right? When we think about like how you called these vegetable oils a toxin. These are toxins to the body, similar to heavy metals and other toxins out there. And when I started studying what happens when we have other toxins like heavy metals, mercury, lead, or other heavy metals enter the body, they also are shuttled to the fat cells, and it's activated through a pathway that I researched called PPAR gamma, which then shuttles it to the fat cells. And I think the body's doing this, and I want to get your insight. I think the body's putting it in the fat cells because there's a lot of room there. It could actually increase it
Yeah.
and create more fat cells. So like the solution to pollution is sort of dilution here. Is that the main reason you think why it goes into the body fat? There's a lot of space for them.
Well, yes, the body fat is the place that our body stores excess energy, right? Excess calories, right? So anytime we eat anything, it gets partitioned into three different areas of our body. One is it just goes immediately to our mitochondria to be burned for energy. And then the two is it goes into our cells to be used for building blocks, to repair cells, to build our muscle, to make new synapses within our brain, to make new skin cells, right? So growth and repair. And then the third is storage for later, because we can't always be eating. We have to be able to have some sort of a built-in energy source. And that's what our body fat is. So everything extra does get stored in our body fat. And our body is very smart at how it partitions it. And that PPAR gamma does play an essential role in it. But what's different about the vegetable oils, vis-a-vis our ability to maintain a normal weight, is that vegetable oils, they go into our body fat just fine. However, we can't easily burn that type of body fat for energy for the reasons we've been talking about, because of the mitochondrial effects. Our cells can't use them for energy. So when our diet is full of vegetable oils, we build body fat that we can't easily burn off. So it makes it very difficult to maintain a normal body weight as long as these things are in our diets. And for most people who aren't like athletes or really have this kind of intense discipline, right? They count their calories, they follow their macros, and they every single day are exercising, and or they just have so much like natural ability to restrict what they eat. Everyone else gains weight. And that's why we're having an obesity epidemic, because the vegetable oils build body fat that we can't easily burn off. As simple as that.
Makes sense to me, Kate. Makes sense to me. So you mentioned one of the problems with these polyunsaturated fats is that they contain many double bonds. You talk about this in the book, making them unstable. They attract oxygen very aggressively. They go rancid. And what happens when they're processing these hateful eight oils? Because of the rancidity that happens when it's introduced to high heat, what are they doing to it to kind of mask the rancidity of these oils?
Well, what they do is, so when you want to extract an oil from a seed efficiently, you need a lot of heat. So they heat these things to death, and they squish them under pressure often. And sometimes, if it's not an organic oil, they also use a solvent, usually hexane, which is a component of gasoline that disqualifies it from being organic because it has toxic effects. But unfortunately, new toxins form out of those polyunsaturates when oxygen, and heat and the enzymes in the seed and the different minerals in the seed all generate a whole bunch of reactive byproducts. It's not as simple as just you squeeze out the oil, because what's happening is you're slaughtering the cellular integrity. And so enzymes are being released and things are interacting in ways that actually, the seed can go beyond the ability of nature to control. And you just get random reactions. And so there's tons of toxins in the first step of processing is the extraction. That's where they use the heat and the pressure and the solvents to get the oil from the seed. Now, let's just pause for one moment to conceptualize how easy it is to get oil from an animal, to get fat from an animal. It's not oil. You chop it off, right? No heat, no pressure. So we don't have to worry about byproduct reactions, right?
What about
With butter?
Yeah, butter. And then what about fruits as well? Like
Well, first of
avocados
all,
and
oh yeah,
olives.
avocado,
Yeah.
yes. So high fat fruits like avocado and coconut, it's simple too. You mash it up. You don't necessarily need heat, although a little bit of heat is often applied because it makes it go faster and more efficient, but still not a lot. And then they centrifuge it, and the fat rises to the top, and then they skim it. They skim it off, basically, which is somewhat similar, I guess, in principle to olive oil. Olives have been bred. Olives, the fruit, also have been bred for so many centuries to be very fatty. So back in the day, the only thing they needed to do was squeeze hard with a stone, and oil would start to drip out when you had a whole bunch of olives. And even the same with peanut, right? So peanuts also, like olives, but actually, I think they came from Africa. So hotter climate, slightly different fatty acid profile, but same idea. They have been bred for a very long time so that even though they are technically a seed, they're so fatty that you don't need to do this extreme pressure, and that you just need to squeeze them a little bit, and you get a high quality oil that needs only minimal refining just to filter out the dirt and junk, right? But to your question was, what do they do to mitigate the toxicity of the crude oil? Well, that is like a discipline of food science. There's textbooks written about this. It's very complicated. That's what oil refining is. It requires dozens and dozens of steps. They have to de-wax it, degum it. They have to filter it. They have to remove the hexane. They've got to winterize it. They've got to bleach it. There's a lot of stuff that they have to do. And they get out most of the toxins. Yay, most of the toxins are removed. But unfortunately, they also remove most of the antioxidants, all of the minerals that were in there, because the minerals cause problems when they get around polyunsaturates. They must be removed, or there will be more reactions. So they have to remove a lot of the good stuff in there. So it's just basically pure empty calories, fat, and some toxicity because they can't get all of it out. And it's a significant amount that remains, depending on the quality of the factory, the quality of the oil, the quality of the original product. But bottom line is, when studies were done on testing the organic expeller pressed canola oil, they found that your average bottles on the shelf had somewhere between 1% and 5% of toxic byproduct type compounds. These toxic aldehydes, toxic, just abnormal chemicals that our body has to eliminate, right? That can cause this intestinal inflammation. They go to the liver, they can cause liver inflammation. A healthy liver can eliminate some of them, but they also start to spread throughout our body and they start having toxicity. So even if we never cooked with them, even if we ate it right off the shelf, we would be getting some toxins, 1 to 5%. But then you cook with it, you open the bottle. Well, first you open the bottle. Let's do things in order here. You allow more oxygen to come inside. You cook with it, more reactions, more toxins, and then it sits around for a while, reacting with more oxygen. It's even sensitive to light. So if you don't keep your oils in the dark, they're going to deteriorate further. But it's really the cooking with them that causes the main issues, and that they degrade so rapidly. And then when we reheat it, more problems, right? So over and over and over again, when we have vegetable oils in our food supply, we are generating toxins and inviting toxicity into our body. We are destroying our metabolism. Vegetable oils are basically oxidative stress in a bottle. And since oxidative stress is the thing that ages our cells, vegetable oils are accelerated aging in a bottle.
Cheers. And one of the things that I help my students kind of visualize what you just explained with the oxidative stress at the cell level is if I bit into an apple, right? If I bit into an apple, left it on the counter, came back a few hours later, it turns brown. That's oxidative. It's oxidating. That's similar to what these vegetable oils are doing at the cell level. One of the things I learned from you, Dr. Cate, and I think this is going to help the audience really help it click for you. Poofas go poof, right? I learned that line from you. Poofas go poof. That means very unstable. They are inflammatory. They're going to react at a high level. Versus, you mentioned saturated fats, no double bonds, no issue there. Monounsaturated fats, just one double bond. So they're more stable. So those saturated fats, as you mentioned, that we've villainized as the boogeyman and the cause of heart disease, which your book illustrates, this is further from the truth, can't be further from the truth. These are going to be animal fats like butter, ghee, beef tallow, duck fat, even healthy lard. These are things that you talk about being healthy and stable. The monounsaturated, and then also coconut oil would be in that saturated fat camp. And then the monounsaturated fats would be more of the avocado oil and the olive oil. And you mentioned they're processed very differently than those seed oils, making them more stable, along with that chemical structure being different.
Exactly. And so it was accounting for their chemical structure and how they've been bred and how they need to be processed. That is what I use to create the list of hateful eight. Because, like you said earlier, vegetable oils, that includes olive oil, it includes coconut. So that term doesn't really work. And even vegetable seed oils doesn't really work because peanut oil is healthy and when it's unrefined, and sesame oil is healthy because for the same reasons that have to do with breeding. Even though sesame oil is very high in polyunsaturated fatty acids,
you just wouldn't heat it, right?
Yeah, you wouldn't heat it for extended periods.
Yeah.
Like you can heat it for a few seconds. That's really all you need when you do like a stir fry. You're not heating it for very long.
Yeah.
I put it kind of in at the end, or maybe just a few minutes. But studies have shown that in some circumstances, peanut oil is actually sesame oil is more stable than olive oil, right? Because it has so many antioxidants and polyphenols and all the things that protect that nature puts into the seed to protect those polyunsaturated fatty acids. And I just want to say again that PUFAs stands for, it's an abbreviation for polyunsaturated fatty acids. So when we say PUFAs go poof, we're talking about these polyunsaturated fatty acids being unstable.
Yeah.
Just since we're throwing out so many terms, it's worth restating.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Yeah, totally, because that might have gone over somebody's head. So yeah, PUFAs stand for polyunsaturated fatty acids. I remember I shared this with you before, but I think it's worth sharing again. When I was a kid, my mom worked at Kentucky Fried Chicken, and obviously they fry in canola, soybean oil. Even when I was a kid, they were using those oils, and I was a happy kid. She would bring me home fried chicken, and of course, I didn't know the dangers of it, but I thought it tastes good. But I remember a few times my mom would not bring me home Kentucky Fried Chicken, and I would get angry, and I would ask her, "Why don't you bring home some fried chicken this time, Mom?" And she would tell me that she only would bring it to me the first 7 days when there's a new oil that they've changed, but they would refry for about 12 to 14 days in the same oil over and over and over until it turns so dark. Then they swap it out, and then she'll bring me home the Kentucky Fried Chicken. Isn't that wild, Dr. Cate?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's like the thing is like, why are we accepting that, in our food supply? It's looks gross. And we're told these are the healthy oils. And maybe, I want to have like a little conversation about the conversation right now about these oils.
Yeah.
So when I first started this, 20 something years ago, nobody was talking about them. And except for the people who were saying that they're healthy, right? So dietitians were saying, doctors didn't really learn about them, but dietitians did. And dietitians were saying, you want to cut the saturated and you want to eat more polyunsaturated fat. They were claiming that they were heart healthy because they lower cholesterol, right? Now, funny thing, I haven't heard anybody saying that anymore. Now, what happens when folks like you go onto social media or folks like me get some publicity, what happens is that, yes, we get debunked by dietitians who, are well-meaning, but they're totally miseducated. But the way we are debunked has shifted. They no longer say these things are heart healthy. The folks talking about them are absolutely wrong, and they're dangerously harming your health. Have you noticed this? That what's happening now is instead they're just saying, oh yeah, maybe they're not the best, but those folks are exaggerating how bad they are.
Yeah, totally have seen that shift.
And that's very important because it means two things. One is they're still shutting down the message, right? They're still successfully shutting down the message because what they're saying is, oh yeah, it's just one more thing you can worry about it if you have the spare time on top of all the other things that we think you should be worrying about. Like, or it should be organic, it should be GMO free, it should be low salt, it should be not too high in cholesterol, all these other things, glyphosate, et cetera, et cetera. That's the noise machine, right? So they instead of directly countering our messages anymore, they're just trying to shut it down in the only way that they can, because they can no longer justify that these oils are healthy, right? And that's shifted since 2020 when I was on Bill Maher, and and then after that I think is when I started was on your shows, and other folks started getting this message out that these oils are toxic. And a lot of people get it. A lot of people accept that because it makes some intuitive sense anyhow. But the reason that these detailed conversations we're having, that I need to have them, is because we have to understand that medical science is really right now been reduced to a marketing arm of the processed food industry. And it's been made it's really easy to do that because medical science has not gotten to the root causes of what makes us sick and what's killing us. And that's what I talk about in chapter 2 of the book. I don't know if you resonated with that message that, root causes in modern medicine now are really non-existent. Yeah. They talk instead about risk factors, like your blood pressure's high, your blood sugar's high, oh, you're overweight. And without getting to the root cause, we are not truly being scientific about it at all. You have to understand the root cause so that you can so that you know what's wrong, right? You can't fix a problem unless you know what the problem is. And modern medicine is not interested in that because they can medicate these risk factors, right? So the understanding that what's the risk factor? What is the root cause? I'm sorry, what is the root cause? The root cause is oxidative stress. That is what kills us. That is what has killed life on Earth since the beginning of multicellular life. Oxygen and polyunsaturated fatty acids have a long and very conflicting relationship. They've been frenemies for 2 billion years. Because what happened was when life first evolved, we were all sludge in the ocean, single cells, very slow, but there was life was not doing very much. It was hard to tell that they were actually alive because there wasn't a lot of energy in the system. And the source of energy at that point was all from the sun. So early life invented photosynthesis, used the sun for energy, and created a byproduct called oxygen. And oxygen was, immediately started attacking the polyunsaturated fatty acids and almost killed out all life on Earth. Some people estimate 99.9%
Wow.
of everything was killed because of oxygen. And we almost it was the end of it almost.
Wow.
And what saved us was antioxidants were invented. The synthetic pathways to stick antioxidants in the cell membrane so that it would protect the polyunsaturates. And it wasn't just antioxidants, it was enzyme systems, it was very complex systems. In fact, a significant portion of all of our biology is geared towards fighting oxygen so that oxygen doesn't destroy our cell membranes. And then along came, the whole world shifted to what we know today because along came a little tiny organism that was basically the great-great-granddaddy of mitochondria. And it learned how to use oxygen, not just to control the energy and do damage control. It learned how to take advantage of oxygen's energy. And that was such an advance in the energy in the system that life evolved from sludge to what we see today. It enabled 2 cells to be one organism. It was so slow, they couldn't even be more than 1 cell at a time. So that's how long and how our body's been fighting oxygen and how fundamental to health it is to be able to control that energy of oxygen in our bodies. And polyunsaturated fatty acids can make that difficult, but vegetable oils make it impossible.
What a magnificent history there of humankind, essentially. That is a brilliant breakdown. It just blows me away how incredible the human body is and just how everything, the history of us. It's really, really fascinating. I want to take a quick break from the video you're watching to share something with you that has made a big difference with my health and the thousands and thousands of students that I teach all across the world. Now, this is a unique device that has been shown to help with skin health, sore muscles, wrinkles, psoriasis, eczema, scoliosis, migraines, sleep issues, arthritis, acne, scar tissue, wound healing, relaxation, and also boost testosterone levels. It's red light therapy. Turn it on, and as you can see, I just leave it there on my desk as I work. 10, 20 minutes per day will suffice. Then head over to bondcharge.com/ketocamp and use the coupon code KETOCAMP to get 15% off your red light device. So whether it's these Bond Charge blue light blocking glasses, their sauna blanket, or any of their awesome products, use that coupon code KETOCAMP at checkout. We'll drop a link down below. Go check them out. They're awesome. And let's get back to today's video. What about the person who's watching and listening? They're like, yeah, I get vegetable oils are bad for you, but I'm just going to take some antioxidants every day to combat that. What are your thoughts on that?
So back in 1950, the idea that antioxidants could extend lifespan um, was first posed by a doctor that I talk about in Dark Calories. His name was Ephraim Racker, and he realized actually that what was killing us was ultimately oxygen. Nobody knew what death was before him, Ephraim Racker. He created the field of longevity medicine, oxidation biology, and basically he was really the great grandfather of the whole biohacking movement, because he started saying maybe we can extend our lifespans if we can control oxygen with antioxidants. Okay, here we are 80 years later, total bust. It doesn't work because biology, this is why that conversation about 2 billion years of biological development went into our body's inborn systems for controlling oxygen, our body's inborn antioxidant systems. 2 billion years, nature working to perfect the system. I don't think a supplement is going to make a difference. And that's why it's totally failed. They've never been able to show that taking antioxidant supplements do anything unless somebody's deficient in an antioxidant that happens to be a vitamin or something that participates in helping our body control oxygen, like a mineral or other vitamins. Actually, all vitamins and all minerals help our body control oxygen. They all play a role in keeping these antioxidant enzyme systems functioning. Enzymes are not something we can supplement with. Should I kind of spell that out, like, and why?
Yeah, we have time. Go
Yeah,
for it.
great. So enzymes are actually something that our cells manufacture enzymes out of amino acids and building blocks in our diet. They are biological machines that are made out of protein, and our body needs certain ones in certain cells, in certain parts of the cell, and our body makes what it needs, where it needs, and puts it there and keeps it there. It knows how to do that. If we were to try, like if we could take some of these enzymes, which have names like catalase and superoxide dismutase and glutathione reductase, if we could eat those, would that help? Seems like a reasonable thing to suggest, right?
Yeah.
It wouldn't do anything because these are biological machines.
Mm.
The process of just putting them in a capsule changes, like basically inactivates most of them. And what, if anything survived, our digestive juices would denature them too, and it wouldn't work, right? And then, but then even more problematic is that our digestive enzymes snip up the machines into their little component parts. So like it's like a recycling plant, and then all the good stuff gets into our bloodstream. So that they are not functional enzymes; they're just building blocks anymore, right?
Interesting.
So yeah, that's kind of like kills that whole idea of supplementing with enzymes.
Yeah, you just destroyed that idea, and I'm with you on that. And even with the antioxidant component, I've even seen some studies when people take too much antioxidants, it actually leads to a whole host of other problems, including cancer too.
Yeah, and that's a really important point because antioxidants they work in teams, because it's not like it's one and done, right? We're talking about taking a high energy molecule and lowering its energy down at a subatomic level. This is complex stuff, and actually it took about a billion years. Dialing back to our a billion-year-old conversation, it took about a billion years for biology to perfect the whole system, because it's that complex. It's, you have oxygen in multiple different high energy states, it's basically like, biology fighting radiation, basically. And there's not just one thing that you're going to be able to use to control radiation. It's a big task. It's a big problem. And there's all kinds of different reactions, all kinds of different things that happen. So we have to leave it up to biology. We have to trust nature. We have to support our biology so that it can do what it needs to do. And the only way to do that is getting the healthiest possible food into your body.
Another term that people call seed oils is linoleic acid. Could you explain a little bit more about linoleic acid? And for those who will hear more about linoleic acid being bad and the connection between what we're talking about here and linoleic acid.
Yeah, so linoleic acid is one of the two main types of polyunsaturated fatty acids that are in our food supply. And here's where the conversation gets derailed in a very problematic way. So I really want to unpack this carefully. So please help me make sure I'm, help translate this.
Yeah.
But the reason linoleic acid, the reason people talk about and focus on linoleic acid is because it actually has like almost like a it become well let me dial it back, is because linoleic acid is a building block. It's essential, right? It's like a vitamin. We use vitamins for a lot of different things in the body. Linoleic acid is kind of like a vitamin made out of fat, so we do need some in the diet. And by the way, I think that's part of why dietitians think they're better than saturated fatty acids. We can make saturated fatty acids from scratch, but these polyunsaturated, both omega-3 and omega-6, are like vitamins. We can't synthesize them ourselves. We need to eat them. So getting back to the omega-6, that is kind of like a vitamin, a precursor to other important compounds our body makes, right? So we take linoleic acid, which has got 18 carbons and 2 double bonds, and we elongate it, and it becomes one of the very important building blocks for our brain cells, which is a long chain polyunsaturated fatty acid. And I'm going to get mixed up now. It's either DHA or EPA. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But it's also a precursor to arachidonic acid, which promotes a certain kind of inflammation under certain circumstances in our cells. Now, that has been way exaggerated. So this is where that's a problem, because there are people out there who are exaggerating the health harms of specifically linoleic acid vis-a-vis inflammation, and they're totally missing the point on all this stuff about oxidation and energy and free radicals and everything that we've talked about so far. And that's the problem, because it's like partly true. So that's what the debunkers latch on to. They say, well, yeah, sure, this omega-6, it could be bad, but like studies have shown that when you give people a lot of imbalance of omega-6, it's not really that much worse than when it's balanced. And there's a reason for that, is because it's not bad because of the imbalance. And we're talking about the imbalance of the omega-6 versus omega-3, right? The fish oils and the flax oil that are supposedly anti-inflammatory. Those compounds are also polyunsaturates, and they also react with oxygen. And they actually react faster because they have 3 double bonds, and they are more prone into deteriorating into toxins. And that's useful to understand, because that's why, in addition to the imbalance in our diet, which is true, they are actually depleted faster from our bodies. So a lot of people are deficient in omega-3 fatty acids because they're not in our food supply and they're not as stable. So you would think, again, that supplementing would have miraculous effects. But studies have shown it has very minimal benefit. It seems to help some people with rheumatoid arthritis, some people with dry eye, maybe macular degeneration, but not much.
Fish oil? Fish oil specifically?
Fish oil supplementation, yeah, omega-3 supplementation, or any omega-3 they've tried various things, flax oil too, right? Slightly different formulation of it. But yes, and that's because they don't understand the root cause of the problem, which is oxidative stress. And so when you throw these molecules in there that are more susceptible to oxidative damage and more prone to generating toxins, you are not solving the root cause. You are contributing to it in some ways. Now, if some people happen to be, deficient in certain tissues, get repleted by chance, then it can help, some people a little bit. And I have heard people say, oh, I took a whole bunch of cod liver oil and, this or that other problem, went away. But it's a minority of people, and it's not kind of like extending their lives or doing anything miraculous.
Yeah.
And it can be a liability as long as you still are, your body fat is full of these vegetable oils.
With the fish oil conversation, I love talking about this because it's one of the things that 2014, 2015, I was a big fish oil guy. I would promote it. And then, of course, I got into your work and Dr. Pompa's work, and then Brian Peskin, who's an MIT researcher. And I started to understand, wow, like you just said, these fish oil is actually even more reactive, more unstable. And the National Institutes of Health, when I was looking at some of their research, they were showing that the average male that's 6 foot tall only requires about 7.2 milligrams of EPA each day. And then when you compare that to the average capsule, there's 500 milligrams, 1,000 milligrams. People take 2, 3, 4. It's this super physiological overdose, and it just didn't make sense to me. So when I learned that, I said, I'm just going to eat like fatty fish, wild caught fish. I'm not going to take the fish oil because I think it causes more problems than it is helping people. And you explain it better than I can, but go a little bit deeper into that.
Well, yeah. So like, just to make some, like, what do these numbers mean? 7.5 milligrams is about a little bit less than 1/100th of a gram, which is a paper clip. A small paper clip weighs about a gram. So it's divide that into 100 pieces. And that's all that your body needs. Now let's compare that to the volume of these polyunsaturated fatty acids from vegetable oils that we're getting, right? So the vegetable oils themselves, we're getting around 2 ounces, which is maybe 100 grams. And I'm being conservative.
Wow.
So 100 grams, right? And so like that is how much oxidative stress we're forcing on our body versus how much our body really actually can handle is mostly those like those milligram and gram amounts. We're forcing our body to handle like 100 times more of these easily oxidizable compounds than biology was designed to deal with. We could do it in the short term, right? We could do, because we have a liver, we've got some antioxidant enzymes that could be upregulated, but in the long term, we can't do it. And what happens, and studies have shown, a very important study that was done in the 50s showed that just feeding corn oil, the polyunsaturated fatty acids changed people's needs for vitamin E. That's what they were studying. Suddenly, after a few years, those polyunsaturated fatty acids had built up in their body fats and gone from, at the time, probably like 5% of what was in the body fat, which is possibly close to an amount we can handle, to like 3 times that, or even 4 times that in different people.
And this was in the 50s?
Yeah, it was done in the 50s. And once that, it takes years for these things to change our body fat composition that way. But once that happened, suddenly, poof, vitamin E plummeted significantly to like less than half of what it was. So that tells you that we cannot handle that much. Vitamin E is an antioxidant. It's one of the main antioxidants that protects the polyunsaturated fatty acids in our membranes. Unfortunately, supplementing with it has only been shown to cause bleeding. Again, because it's only solving part of the problem. It's a systemic problem. And, solving a systemic problem with one little issue is not going to help with one little tool, right? So this study showed that you have to study people for years. If you're going to design a trial, they concluded you really need to let it go for at least 5 years, because it takes that long for things to balance out in your body fat, for the amount that you're eating to equal the amount that is in your body fat. And that has profound effects on our metabolism and our ability to control energy, because it will deplete the antioxidants. And suddenly we're going to be opening ourselves up to inflammation. And in that study, they showed an alarming increase in the rates of cancer. In just that one study. They weren't even looking for it, but it was so obviously, so much higher in this study group of people who were getting the corn oil versus the people who are just getting the baseline diet at the time, which had much more animal fat in it than what we have today. So that at the end of that study, the cancer rates were dramatically increased. And this wasn't a huge study. So to see that kind of effect in a relatively small study when they weren't even looking for it tells you that these things really open us up to cancer.
Wow.
not to mention other diseases, because
Yeah.
they weren't like looking, didn't go on long enough to see like dementia and neurodegenerative disorders or the genetic effects. They weren't looking for that.
This is wild. I have so many thoughts and questions that's just racing through my mind right now. You mentioned obesity and how these polyunsaturated fats, these vegetable oils, they make up our fats essentially, and that creates inflammation. They're really hard to get rid of. That could contribute to gaining weight and also weight loss resistance, the inability to lose weight, even though you're trying to do that. Recently, Oprah had a special on obesity and talking about like Ozempic and different things there. But I don't recall, and I might have missed it, but I don't recall anything mentioned about vegetable oils in that conversation with obesity. And you said that it's one of probably the leading cause to obesity. So I'd love for you to unpack that more and your thoughts on it being missed by the mainstream, Oprah included.
Yeah, so the book is called Dark Calories because literally people are not seeing these oils, right? They're not considering them, they're not thinking about them. It's not factoring into any of our conversations around obesity or metabolic disease. And it's absurd because 30% of our calories come from these oils. So
Wow. Yeah.
that shows you that there's just like this level of disconnect that is absolutely absurd.
And
It's
you also,
absurd.
in your book, this is something I didn't know until I read your book. More than 80% of foods in the United States contain at least one type of vegetable oil. At least 80%. That is insane. I didn't realize it was that high.
Yeah, just like what's in the average grocery store. Absolutely right, because they've made their way into condiments, into vegetable preserves, into pretty much all frozen food, prepared food, anything that has any kind of a added fat, which is most foods except for pure sugar foods, is they're going to add one of these vegetable oils to it. So how do they make us gain weight? Well, we already touched on the fact that our cells don't want to burn them, but what they do that's even more sinister is they change how our metabolism fuels itself. So what I'm talking about is, think about this. If you can't burn your body fat, which is there for you between meals, right? That's why we have it.
Yeah.
After a few hours, once the energy that came from your food has been, used up, then your cells are in trouble because they really don't like that body fat. What are they going to do instead? They need an alternative source of fuel. Well, the one thing that's always in our bloodstream is sugar.
Hmm.
And it's a perfectly suitable fuel for mitochondria. So the cells immediately start using up more sugar, and your blood sugar drops, and that makes you insanely hungry. So not only are we unable to burn off our body fat, the flip side of that is we get hungry, and what do?
We snack,
We
we
eat.
eat. So what happens if we don't eat? Will the body then break down some muscle and protein to create that glucose via gluconeogenesis?
Yeah, so that can happen. And what happens if we don't eat is that it is a huge stress on our brain. So the first thing that happens after you start feeling hungry is you're going to feel more symptoms. You're going to feel perhaps brain fog. You might feel anxiety because your brain is not processing things properly, and suddenly everything feels overwhelming. Like you're just in this brain fog state, like
Yeah.
nothing, you can't think.
You're hangry.
Um, yep, you might be hangry. And that irritability in the hangry, the anger part, that comes from how your body copes with this falling blood sugar. It releases stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. And adrenaline and cortisol get you hyped up.
Yeah, and it raises glucose too.
And it solves the immediate energy deficit. Absolutely. So some people, when they can't eat, their bodies are really good at raising their blood sugar, and they don't necessarily gain that much weight. Maybe they don't gain any weight, but what they are doing to compensate is using protein as a fuel instead.
Mhm.
And they can use the protein from their food. So instead of using the protein as a building block, like you think it's going to build your muscle, no, it's just going to get burnt by those hungry cells. Or they can actually even, because we're talking about a couple hours after a meal, there is maybe no protein left in the system. Now, that stress hormones are going to tell your liver to start breaking down the muscle, to start creating sugar from scratch. And the way it does that is by breaking down muscle. The stress hormones actually can break down muscle. The stress hormones do the breaking down of the muscle, and then the broken down bits of muscle called amino acids go to the liver, which can turn them into sugar. So that's how gluconeogenesis solves the problem temporarily, but at the same time, it creates another problem because it's breaking down your muscle.
Yeah.
And this is why diabetics have skinny fat, right?
Yeah.
And actually, even if you're not a diabetic, there's an epidemic of skinny fat. Yeah. This is one thing that I write about in, I think it's chapter 3 of Dark Calories, that there's a doctor named Phil Maffetone who is very interested in athletes and body composition. And he found that even athletes these days are skinny fat, some of them. And I think it's entirely because of this process that I just described. But that is not something that's part of the conversation, right? That is not something medical science is focusing on or thinking about. This is my hypothesis. So I call it actually the energy model of insulin resistance, because it all comes down to energy. And insulin resistance is this state where our body needs sugar for energy because it can't use body fat. And it's the precursor to all other metabolic diseases. And advanced insulin resistance is type 2 diabetes. But insulin resistance is also associated with cancer and Alzheimer's and asthma and naturally obesity, and anxiety disorders and mental health problems. So truly understanding this it's like the Rosetta Stone of all diseases. You can suddenly understand the root cause is our diet full of vegetable oils, depleting our antioxidants and making us crave sugary foods or carbohydrate rich foods that make us gain weight. And there are also junk foods too. So like we're kind of prone to craving junk foods. Yeah. So it's a terrifically vicious cycle that we're trapped in by vegetable oil.
Yeah, wow. And you talked about that as well in Fat Burn Fix. I remember there was a chapter about this. So for a lot of my audience, they do keto, right? Carnivore keto. Yeah. And some people do struggle to burn fat and get into ketosis. It could take them 3 weeks. It could take them over a month. Are you saying that for those individuals who are having trouble breaking down fat and producing ketones, it's probably because they have a lot of vegetable oils in their body fat?
Still, that's right, because their metabolism still doesn't want to burn that body fat. So they actually might need some carbohydrates. Like there's a lot of folks going on 0 carbohydrate diets. And I think the healthier folks can probably handle that. And, like the carnivore diet, it's a simple diet to understand and follow, and gives you a lot of nutrition. But I don't recommend it for people who are more metabolically damaged, because I think it could lead to more problems. And I've actually seen, unfortunately, a couple of folks who developed kidney problems from pure carnivore. They were older, they had a lot of weight to lose, they lost a lot of body fat maybe too quickly because they were basically burning off too much PUFA all at once. Remember, the whole reason they gained weight is because the body didn't want to burn that stuff. So now you're forcing your cells to burn it. And sure, maybe the meat is giving you some nutrients you didn't have and making you feel a little bit better that way. But you have to truly prepare your body much more than just eating more protein. It's much more involved in that. And that this is a problem because of hangry, right? So in Dark Calories, I teach people how to gauge not just their hangry, but also the other symptoms of blood sugar dropping. And that includes the brain fog and dizziness and sweating and all these symptoms of stress hormones and even some nausea. Headache is another symptom. Yeah. That is how I recommend tracking your metabolic recovery, by the absence of those symptoms.
Mm.
And this is a completely novel way of looking at metabolic health in terms of energy, in terms of your body's ability to generate energy. That's why I call it the insulin model of insulin resistance. And that's why I'm the energy guru,
Yes,
because I
you
am
are.
helping you to, I'm helping your metabolism to control energy. That's what you need to recover from metabolic diseases like diabetes, like insulin resistance, and everything else
Oh, so
that you want
important.
to recover
Yeah, so
from.
important. And I think you meant the energy model of insulin resistance, right? That's what you meant? Because you said the
Yeah.
insulin model of insulin resistance, but you meant
Oh
energy
my
model.
goodness.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to correct you. The energy model of
Thank
insulin
you.
resistance is, and you're the energy guru. I love that. It's so true. So the first step, Dr. Cate, get rid of these vegetable oils. Stop exposing yourself to these oils. That's the first step. The second step would be, okay, you could probably start to lower your carbs slowly. And then eventually, if you want to do keto, you could do that. But that's not the first step. And that's what I teach my students too. First, we remove these inflammatory fats. Then we kind of tiptoe our way to gradually lowering the carbs. We get them into ketosis. We verify that by looking at glucose and ketones. And eventually, I'll graduate a lot of them to carnivore, but I'm never getting somebody who's damaged with these fats and a standard American diet right into carnivore. To your point, too big of a shift, too many problems that will occur there. But here's the challenge: restaurants. Okay, we go to restaurants, and you talk about this in your book. Even the fine dining you mentioned have these polyunsaturated fats, vegetable oils. I've seen it all over the place. One of the things I do, and I know you do it too, is I think you do it. You could correct me if I'm wrong, but I tell the servers that I'm allergic to vegetable oils. And when I was doing this a few years ago, my fiance would always roll her eyes and be like, "Oh my gosh, she's embarrassing me." Now she's all for it because she understands how dangerous it is. But one of the things I developed for my students is a seed oil allergy card that I have
Oh,
them. Yeah, I
that's
have
great.
them. Yeah, I have them use this, and it just says, "Dear chef, I have allergies," and it has the hateful eight, and then it says the following are safe. And I have my students, and I do this. I show it to the server. They bring it back to the chef, and then they come back and they mark on the menu all the things that are safe or some adjustments they can make to avoid those vegetable oils. What are your thoughts on that?
That is fantastic. And, that's really going to educate people working in the restaurant industry about the prevalence of these things and the fact that people are starting to, not want them and they might want to change.
Yeah.
Um, I have developed I don't go out, we don't have like the same restaurant scene that you have in Miami. So, like, I don't go out as often. And also, we don't have restaurants that have, people who are willing to do that. I don't, as
Really?
so readily. Like, so what I've done instead is I've shifted my strategy here. Because I did used to do something similar, although I didn't have a cool, amazing card that you have. What I've done instead is I just say, do you have anything back there that you can cook for me in butter,
Mm,
not margarine and not butter oil? And so that is a little faster, like, because and it feels, maybe it's not as educational to them, but it's more positive to them, like, because they know exactly what they can do for you, and it's a simpler problem to solve. um, and then the other thing I do is, like I say, I will do the same thing with olive oil, right? Because those are the
yeah.
two most likely things for them to actually have back there. And so far, it's been 100% with butter. Not all places will have olive oil, however,
Yeah.
unfortunately, because there's so many blends,
Correct.
and that should be on your card. Do you have that blend on your card, like an
Yeah.
oil
It,
blend?
it says, please make sure, it does. It says, please make sure the approved alternatives are not cut or blended with the allergic option. So it's on there.
Oh, great! I love that cut, as it makes it seem like they're ripping you off, because they
Exactly.
are.
I was in Las Vegas last week speaking at a conference, and I was staying at the M Resort in Henderson, Nevada. And there was a restaurant called Anthony's where I was having dinner with some friends. And of course, I brought out the seed oil card. And this is really rare, but this restaurant, I want to give them a shout out, Anthony's at the M Resort. They don't have a single seed oil at that restaurant. They cook everything in duck fat and in olive oil. And that was
Wow.
so rare to come across that. And I was just like applauding them, like, good job. And I got all this food. I knew it was safe. So I want to support those restaurants that are doing it the right way. And you're right. The more we request this, the more they're going to start making changes. There's also seed oil Scout. Have you heard of that app before?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, he reached out to me like when he was very early in the development stage, like to help him share, so I shared it with my followers, and he had a few questions for me too. But yes, so the seed oil Scout is actually, I recommend it in Dark Calories in my resources in the back of the book, because I want to, it's a crowdsourced sort of knowledge thing.
Yeah.
The members are helping to make the app better.
Yeah.
So I want it to be more popular so that more people can benefit and this message can get out. Because they put like a little plaque in the window about like seed oil Scout, approved.
Yeah, I love that.
So that's like a little signal, a virtue signal, a real virtue signal. That's amazing. But just imagine like how great it would be if 10% of all restaurants were seed oil free.
Yeah.
I mean, you imagine if you could go to like a truck stop, right? You're stuck on the highway late in the middle of the night. Your car maybe broke down. You've got to have dinner, and the only thing is a truck stop. But it's not going to be the best chili, because they always have chili at truck stops.
This is true.
It's not going to be the best quality meat, but it's not going to be toxic. It's not poisonous, right? So just imagine how freeing that would be. And so that's what I'm aiming for. That's what I hope, that Dark Calories can start to create this like combined mentality goal. We can all work towards that world.
Yeah.
Because everyone says that is the biggest challenge. And restaurants are an important part of like the joy of life. We want to socialize with our friends at restaurants, and we don't want to have to be like delaying the whole process and making the waiter or waitress, do extra work. And nobody really likes that, right? So just imagine if we could create this world, but we have to work together, because there are powerful forces who do not want that world to exist. Mm-hmm. They are profiting off of people eating vegetable oils because it makes cheaper food, high profit margin food. And another reason I call it dark calories, because this is sinister, they're profiting off the fact that these oils make us sick.
Yeah.
And whether they know it or not, they just know that they don't know it. Maybe the vegetable oils, maybe they don't know. They know that their cheap food is not really making people healthy. And they don't care, because the food companies have their stock portfolio is full of drug companies. Yeah. So they're basically the same industry. The processed food industry, the fast food industry, and the drug companies and the healthcare industry. They're the same industry. They're the problem. They're out there suppressing this message and trying to shut me down. And like part of the reason I'm somewhat less articulate than I'd like to be right now is because I was so sad about one of these reviews that I got yesterday for the book Dark Calories. It just like made me cry for a long time. And then I lost a bunch of sleep because it was in Publishers Weekly, which honestly, like normal people don't read that. But I mean, regular people don't read, they don't even hear of Publishers Weekly, but it's very influential for booksellers, bookstores, right? And it was a complete shutdown kind of an article, kind of a review for Dark Calories. They said, well, there's really very little evidence. She's kind of exaggerating. But if you want to be safe, you can add this to the list of things that are already making your life difficult, right? That was one more thing to avoid. Yeah, why not, right? That's exactly how to shut down this message. Mm. And so that's why I'm like, we have to take control of the conversation. We have to be ready for that. We have to be ready for the people who are saying, we don't have science. And one way to do that is to point them to Dark Calories, because I wrote this book to be that, for that reason. I truly did. Like, this is the science. Whoever wrote that review didn't read the book, because
exactly my thoughts. Yeah, that person did not even read the book. They probably read what was it about, and they already had a biased view on vegetable oils, and they wrote that nasty review. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, it's really, but But you know what? They had to lie. They had to say something that wasn't true, and that's making them do more work than they used to have to do. So it's a small win. They lied. They said, "Oh, Dr. Cate even admits she doesn't have evidence." What? But that's a great thing to say, to kind of make it be like, move along here. There's nothing to see
Correct.
here. There's not even no reason to read this book. There's nothing interesting,
Yeah, well,
right?
that's the dark forces that we're dealing with, especially when you put out a book like this, which is challenging a lot of these organizations and institutions. Like that's going to happen.
These institutions are the most powerful on the planet, right? They are the number one, like the healthcare industry is the number one industry in America, which has the biggest economy on the planet. And I'm sure it's also, up there in every other country too.
Yeah.
So we're challenging the most powerful people on the planet.
Yeah.
We're threatening them in a way that they don't like.
Yeah.
And no one else is threatening them in this way. And that's why they are shutting us down like this. They're not saying, because they can't say that we're not telling the truth. They can't do that. Because if anybody were going to look into that, they would see that they lied to us when they said not too many years ago, these oils are heart healthy. And it's still on the canola bottle,
Yeah.
the Mazola bottle still says heart healthy.
American Heart Association stamp of approval, right on there.
Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm.
What
And yeah.
I was just gonna say, last year, I think I had emailed you about this. It was January of 2023, so over a year ago. I posted a video about seed oils, a reel, 60 seconds, and I was actually quoting you, and I was talking about that scenario that I asked you about what's worse, so smoking cigarettes, eating sugar, or eating these processed vegetable oils, and you had mentioned it's the vegetable oils, and I made that video talking about that part of the conversation we had, and Instagram put that false information tag on it, and then there was an article that they wrote attached to it, and the article was just about this is being exaggerated. Like they weren't arguing the points, but this is all
Right.
being exaggerated. And ever since then, every time I post a video on seed oils and it goes viral, it automatically gets that false information flag. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a new problem that we didn't face. Like I didn't face this when I first started because no one was talking about them and no one was paying attention to the message. They didn't think it was threatening enough. But now clearly it's threatening because they're allowing dietitians to say that sugary foods are not a problem and children should be able to have them when they want. They're allowing health experts to say that being morbidly obese is actually just another form of healthy body.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
And,
what?
and that it's just all genetics. It's not your fault, which is a very much of a victim mentality.
Yeah, it's making you feel hopeless. Exactly.
Yeah,
Right. It's like, oh, you can't, you're just not meant to, you people, you're not meant to be healthy.
yeah,
That's just not in the cards for you.
yeah. It's not true.
It's racist. I mean, it's racist because the people who are most affected tend to be the minority groups,
Yeah.
particularly African Americans. So I think it's a racist message. But you're just not up to the level of health that white people can have.
It's
That
so
is evil. That should be being flagged. It's
Yeah,
not.
it's dark, no pun intended. All of this, that's why it's a great title, Dark Calories.
Right.
Tufts University, right? Dr. Mosafarian last year, or at least 2 years ago, with their food compass. And if anybody wants to look that up, just do a Google search for Tufts University Food Compass. And it shows, foods that are in green to be encouraged to eat, foods in yellow in moderation, and of course, foods in red to be minimized. And in the red was red ground beef and eggs cooked in butter. And in the yellow, it was egg substitute fried in vegetable oil as a healthier option than eggs cooked in butter. And it's a perfect example how they don't want us to be healthy. It's the complete opposite of health, sharing that recommendation from them. It's so wicked. It's crazy.
Right. And, for the folks, I get this question a lot is like, how do I know who to trust?
Hmm.
Like, because this person is at Harvard or this other person, they make a lot of sense. They make a good point. They say that these oils are mildly toxic, but not that bad. So how do I know who to believe? And that's, some people don't struggle with that so much, and that's great. They can see kind of right, they follow the money, they have that natural instinct. But a lot of people don't. And for them, I've kind of struggled to come up with a simple way of helping them out to sort this out. And I think I found it. So you can tell me what you think of this.
Yeah.
If anyone's ever lied to you, don't trust them again. Right? And so 𝙎𝙬𝙎𝙎𝘎𝙎𝙬𝙎 was saying for many years that we need to eat more vegetable oil. And now he's not saying that so loudly, not in so many words. And 𝙎𝙬𝙎𝙎𝙎𝙎 also has accepted money from the vegetable oil industry, and he didn't tell us. So in my book, a lie of omission is a lie. He didn't tell us he was accepting money. He didn't kind of announce, oh, wait, these aren't actually heart healthy after all. He just kind of stopped quietly pushing them so much for heart health. That means he's a liar. And I don't trust liars.
Yeah.
Other people, if that doesn't do it, if that doesn't work for you and you do trust people who've lied to you, okay, I'm sorry. I haven't come up with a good way of telling the truth. But of discriminating between who's lying, and who's really giving you good nutrition advice.
Yeah.
But that's the best thing I got right now.
That's great. That's great advice. If they've lied to you before, chances are they're lying to you again. One of the things I say is to pay attention to what the government tells you to do in terms of nutrition and just do the complete opposite. And you're going to probably be healthier and down the right path, right? Dr. Jason Fung calls it the George Costanza effect from Seinfeld, doing everything opposite and getting good results. Pretty much that's the way it's going in this day and age, isn't it?
I mean, yeah. And it's just really sad because I didn't want to have to be that person that's like, oh, you can't trust the government. And it's really as simple as that. But it's getting to that point where it kind of almost really is as simple as that. But the thing is that the government, it's not just the government, it's also your doctor.
Yeah. It's true.
And unless you understand, how to tell who's a liar, you're not going to know when your doctor has been miseducated by these liars. And now his nutrition advice or his advice to take a cholesterol pill is going to hurt your health.
Yeah.
And that's another reason that I felt I really needed to write the book, was because my other books didn't say this. But in order to be healthy, you have to be prepared to have this difficult conversation with your doctor. Because when you stop the vegetable oils that were only called healthy because they lower your cholesterol is going to go up most likely. And chances are your doctor is not going to be happy. And they're going to say, your cholesterol is too high. Now you have to take a statin drug or change your diet radically to back where it was, which you probably weren't feeling so good. And that's a whole different thing to ignore than the government.
Yeah.
Your personal doctor who's maybe delivered some of your children or helped you out of, infections, is just a nice person. And you like and respect them, and you want them to believe in what you're doing. They're not going to until this conversation changes. And so Dark Calories arms you with this. I aim for it to arm you with the self-confidence that you do truly know more than your doctor about cholesterol and heart attacks.
Yeah.
Because frankly, you have to.
Yeah.
To protect your health, your husband's health, your girlfriend's health, your children's health, your family's health. This myth about cholesterol is what inspired me to write the book, because it's a deadly myth. It is more deadly than all the weapons humanity has devised over the past 100 years. Atomic bombs and TNT and all these things. Probably TNT's older than 100 years. But it's killing billions of us.
Yeah.
And it's maiming us. We're not losing limbs, but we're losing our sight to macular degeneration. We're losing our minds to psychiatric illnesses. We're losing our children to severe autism where we can't even have them in our house. They need to be institutionalized sometimes. We're losing our parents to dementia. This is how the lie about cholesterol is maiming us. And it's why I think the American Heart Association is a criminal organization that needs to be held accountable for basically war crimes against humanity. And they're not a government organization, by the way. Like a lot of people think, oh yeah, the American Heart Association, nobody trusts them. They're a private medical organization. They educate doctors. They control what your doctor is telling you about a healthy diet and how to keep your heart healthy. And if you haven't noticed, everyone's obsessed with heart attacks and heart health. And when we talk about a healthy diet, we almost always talk about heart health, and we don't talk about a healthy diet affecting like tinnitus or even heartburn or like our brains, like the things that a diet does affect. It's all down to heart disease. Isn't that a little odd?
Yeah.
And that's because of the cholesterol theory. The American Heart Association wants to keep us just terrified of cholesterol, terrified of heart disease, because that's the one thing that they have a, quote, answer for. Cut your cholesterol levels. And how's it working? Well, heart disease is still the number one killer.
Yeah. 695,000 people every year. Every 33 seconds, somebody dies from heart disease in the U.S. Call him out, Kate. I love that you call him out. You called him out before with me, and I just love it. So you speak so boldly. It's so important. The American Heart Association, I mean, just a month ago or so, they had that study that came out about intermittent fasting causing cardiovascular deaths by, I believe, 91% it was. And when you look into the study, you realize it was such a poorly designed abstract, first of all. And it was a questionnaire asking people what they ate. And like people actually remembered that. And number two, what did they eat during their window? Probably a whole bunch of vegetable oils, right? So it's like they're not accounting for all the moving parts there. With the American Heart Association and the conversation we have that we should be having with our doctors, I think you make a really important point. With your book, Dark Calories, it's such a phenomenal resource, and you could get it on Amazon. It's available today. It just came out. It's available on drcate.com, drcate.com, and it's available at bookstores. Is the Audible version also available?
Yes.
Yeah, awesome.
Yes. And I wish I was narrating it, but I'm narrating the intro and a couple other little parts because of a tragic miscommunication. And I do actually really like my narrator who narrated the other books.
She was great. I listened to them on Audible. She was fantastic. Yeah, she did a great job. She actually is very similar to you. Like I felt like it was you that I was listening to, even though I knew it wasn't.
Yeah, a lot of people have said that. So like they're like, "Oh, you didn't narrate them?" So like I recommended her, and then I was like, "Oh, wait a second, maybe I can just read it."
Yeah.
And they said, "Oh, well, too late." And I kind of fought for it, so I got like the introduction.
Okay. It is a pain in the butt to narrate a book. I did it with Keto Flex, and oh my gosh, I never knew it would be that difficult. It was really a challenge for me. Now I'm narrating the second edition of Keto Flex, and then my new book next year will be narrated by me. But it is a pain in the butt. But you do have a great person to kind of model how you sound. So that's awesome that she's the same person for your book, Dark Calories. I have a question, Dr. Kate. With the back and forth with like nutritionists and dietitians and doctors. But by the way, I forgot to close that point. With your book, Dark Calories, I was saying go get it and then read it and maybe even gift it to your doctor so they could read it. And a really good doctor will look into it and then you could have a conversation. So that was the point I was trying to make before. With what I was going to say next is with that debate of dietitians and nutritionists and even doctors saying there's no problem with vegetable oils and the debunkers, you call them. I like that. Do you think part of that is also part of the disconnect and part of their claims? Do you also think that when they choose studies to look at and put on their TikTok screen or whatever it is to argue our points, do you think that they're choosing studies and they're not distinguishing between adulterated seed oils and unadulterated seed oils? And I'd love to hear your thoughts on the difference between those two as well.
Okay, so first, let me answer that question. By adulterated, I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean. What do you mean? Like oxidized?
Yeah,
like
so what I
used
mean,
for cooking already?
like what I mean is like sunflower oil, for example. It's part of the hateful eight, and it's usually processed the wrong way. But then there's a way to process it that's cold pressed and organic, that's unadulterated, right? So that's what I mean about adulterated versus unadulterated.
Hold on. There is a way to process it that would preserve the nutrients, but organic doesn't do it. So I'm so glad you brought that up because that is a huge misperception. Like a lot of folks even like the Whole30 brand, right? They use organic, high oleic, expeller press sunflower oil. And they believe that it's healthy. I don't think it is, because you can't extract these oils without generating toxins that then need to be cleaned up. And so they should not be given the organic label, because you can measure toxins in them. How are they then given the organic label? Because to qualify organic, you just have to not add toxins. So
Interesting.
that means they're not, expeller pressed. So I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that is there's a lot to this, Ben. And, I myself have been studying this for so many years. And even just today, like some of the basic concepts about smoke point, I kind of had to revise a little bit and, think about it more in a more detailed way. So we are constantly learning, and you are an ultimate scientist, and you build in new, I've heard you talk, I know what you do. You build in new information. So now I just gave you a homework. You got to build that one in too. Sorry.
No, I love it. That makes sense to me. Now, my next question is, what about grapeseed oil? Is it the same thing, or are there any of these seed oils that can be processed in a way that doesn't create these toxins?
They can be, but they aren't on scale, right? So it would be like a boutique, artisanal,
Got it. Okay.
tiny little bottle that's not going to be used in a restaurant. It's not going to be
Yeah,
used
I
by the
I
processed
get
food
that, and I
industry.
agree. Like 99% of
Yes.
them, you just want to
Yeah.
avoid it when you see
Right.
sunflower and
Okay.
grapeseed. But I want to know about those companies that do process it the right way. Are they actually, are we consuming something? Because there is like some companies that I'm aware of, like Andrea's seed oils and Pureform, that have organic, cold pressed, nitrogen infused sort of oils like sunflower and grapeseed. And I want to know if you think those are
Right.
healthy or unhealthy as well.
Okay, so that's okay. That's a totally different question than what I was understanding. I thought you were talking about just like what's out there in the commercial food supply. Yes, those could be healthy. They could be. Unfortunately, right now, as we are like all in the state of basically PUFA overload in our body fat and antioxidant depletion, I can't really say that we should go out of our way to eat more of them. Maybe they have so many like antioxidants that they could help our digestive system, but those antioxidants don't support our body's enzyme system, right? Remember, as we talked about earlier. So I'm not sure it would be worth it, and that's just my best answer right now.
Okay. Okay. What
But they're
about,
not bad.
yeah,
They're not like
understood.
you
Yeah,
could
I'm
use them
glad
as
we
if
made
you like
that.
the flavor.
Yeah,
Yeah. If you like the flavor, like sesame seed oil, they're like sesame oil, seed oil essentially,
correct.
right?
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't want to cook with them, you don't want to eat them every day, but if you really like the flavor, then use them a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And for me personally, I pretty much am seed oil free unless I'm getting it where I'm not aware, from here and there. So it would make sense for me to maybe have that from time to time if it's done the right way. But for the average person who's overloaded, probably not a good idea, to your point.
Right.
What are your thoughts on phosphatidylcholine, like PC oil? Like Body Bio makes a phosphatidylcholine that's organic. This is an omega-6 fat, but it's processed the right way. And there's a lot of benefits as it pertains to that mitochondria membrane with this fat. So what are your thoughts on phosphatidylcholine?
So that is a supplement that is also a nutrient that our bodies can manufacture. Um, Analogous to the enzymes we were talking about. Like we can't eat enzymes, but because our bodies make them, our bodies need to make their own. Now, phosphatidylcholine is a nutrient. It's a minor nutrient. Um, do we really need it? I don't think so. And I wouldn't say that the best source would be something that has omega-6 in there. Honestly, I would say like egg yolks have similar uh, nutrients in there. They're going to be phosphatidylcholine that has different fatty acids on it, and possibly not the polyunsaturated fatty acids, possibly more of the monounsaturated fatty acid on the phosphatidylcholine, because the phosphatidylcholine is like a whole category of compounds, and it can have different fatty acids. But yes, it's an important component of all of our cell membranes, particularly mitochondria. Theoretically, it could be helpful if people have certain enzyme deficiencies. right? Where their mitochondria are particularly unable to manufacture this stuff. For sure, it could be extremely like life-saving in those cases. How do you know if that's you? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that one. But, I would see if you take something and you notice like amazing, incredible benefits within, immediately, like within a few days or a week or two at the most, then it's helping you. Could be. Do you need to take it forever? If you have an enzyme deficiency, a genetic deficiency, probably you do. Does everyone? I don't know. I wouldn't think so. I don't know. But you know me, I have to tell you this. I am biased against supplements. And this has been a huge problem for me because I can't sell them in good conscience, right? So that's just my bias.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Do you take any supplements at all?
Vitamins and minerals,
You
yes.
take vitamins and minerals? Okay. That's good. At least you take some.
Yes, I do. And I actually recommend on my website, I have a webpage. One of my most popular web pages is the ones that I recommend for folks and how to tell if you need like which ones that you might need. Yeah, like how do you know if you need calcium, right? Because maybe you get enough dairy. Well, I tell you how to do that on my drkate.com website. And I also list that as a resource in the Dark Calories book, how to know like which supplements might benefit you. And one of these days I'm going to maybe make my own vitamin or something like that.
Yeah, that'll be a great idea. Your website is such a valuable resource too, by the way. So everybody go. We'll put notes. We'll put your book link and your website down below, along with their social, drkate.com. So if you're following a low carbohydrate keto diet or carnivore diet, this is one of the most important tips. I see a lot of people who struggle with keto and carnivore, and the reason they struggle is because they are losing too many electrolytes. They're becoming mineral depleted. Every cell in your body needs minerals to function, to produce energy, which helps you burn fat and feel good. My favorite minerals and electrolytes are from Beam Minerals. These are fulvic and humic compounds that are bioavailable, that have over 70 minerals in them. It tastes like water. They're carnivore friendly. Let me explain why. There are no anti-nutrients in them. It does not break a fast. As a matter of fact, it could support your fasting window. And it's been a game changer for my health, and I recommend it to all my students. Head over to beamminerals.com. Use the coupon code AZADI at checkout, my last name, AZADI at checkout, to get a nice discount. Beamminerals.com, coupon code is AZADI. Going back to the conversation with the debunkers out there, do you think when they're cherry picking data and they're showing things that, these seed oils are not that bad for you, are they potentially looking at the unadulterated versions, which is the rare variety of these seed oils?
Definitely not. Because the studies, I've looked at a lot of the citations that have been used to debunk me. I've spent many hours poring over them over the past 10 or so years when it first started. As they came out, these studies have been done on the subject for many years. And I ran into them because I was looking for this myself. So I didn't need any debunker out there to show me what they were. I've looked at them already and I found flaws. And I don't think that they are cherry picking them. I think they just don't know what they don't know. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. People who are experts in a field, they have no clue that they might not be, that there might be something that they still don't know. And that's just a failing of the human species. And so they don't have this open mind that they need in order to be true scientists and give good advice. So they aren't looking for reasons they might be wrong, and they don't even understand the relevant science. I have a section, a small little box in Dark Calories called, "Do nutrition scientists even understand like what they're studying?" or something like that. Because they are miseducated. They don't learn what I'm talking about in Dark Calories. Because in order to understand it myself, I've had to cross so many different scientific silos to enter like different silos that are normally kept separate. I interviewed seed oil manufacturing experts, some of whom did not think that the toxins that they know are in the seed oils, and their job is to try to minimize their production. Well, they don't even think that, they don't know that these things are absorbed into their body. They told me with a straight face, they're not absorbed. That's not what the science says. But that's outside of their specific silo.
Yeah.
You see? So in order to understand this huge topic, you have to be able to cross into different scientific silos and put all these different separate puzzle pieces together to create one big picture. Vegetable oils are the thing that makes junk food a junk food. They are the worst substance in the food supply, and they're destroying our metabolisms, they're aging us, and they're creating a new generation of young people who are metabolically damaged and who do not have the same chance, the same shot at a good, healthy life as my generation or your generation. And that's what we're seeing in the statistics with type 2 diabetes in 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds. When I was in medical school, the main risk factor for type 2 diabetes was not weight, it was age. And now we're seeing it in children, and we're seeing strokes in children. And the life expectancy of the latest generation is 6 years less than my generation. And that's the official count. And I think it's much worse than that, because the people making these estimates do not understand the transgenerational effects and how their genetics are fundamentally different, because that's a different scientific silo. And there are geneticists out there who are studying this problem. And they're finding that children now are born with genetic damage that alters their metabolism, and they're metabolically different than any other previous generation and predisposed to gaining weight and having body fat in excess of normal, and having muscle mass and bone mass less than normal. They're predisposed to this genetically. Because why? Because in utero, their parents, whose body fat was full of body fat, their mother, unknowingly was forcing their little developing baby to use these oxidative stress promoting chemicals as fuel. And that's going to cause oxidative stress in a developing fetus. And that's going to diminish the capacity for growth. And so we're seeing stunted growth. We're seeing puberty happening early, because that's an indication of lifespan being curtailed significantly. That's something nobody's talking about. Puberty happens at 6. You think that person is going to have they're going to have menopause at an early age? Guarantee it. Do you think they're going to live as long as their parents? Guarantee not. So we are profoundly changing not just the way we look and we feel in our generation with these oils, and with medical ignorance and the Dunning-Kruger effect and dietitians and people not knowing what they don't know. We're changing what the human race looks like as a species. It's really scary, but we're seeing it. Like, it explains a lot of stuff that you see in the news. The suicide rates, the anxiety levels, boys and girls not being able to tell whether they're really a boy or a girl. Sure, some of that's happening because it's kind of the popular thing right now. But what if some of it were their physiology isn't working right?
Yeah.
What if that's the case? We know there is such a thing as endocrine disruptors.
Yeah.
And we know that it disrupts normal sexual development. It causes small penises. It causes infertility. It causes serious challenges for the rest of somebody's life. We aren't looking as to whether vegetable oils are endocrine disruptors, but I guarantee if we start looking, we will find that they are, because of oxidative stress that promotes inflammation, that disrupts our hormonal function. So no doubt they are serious endocrine disruptors.
I agree. I agree. That's so powerful what you just shared, and that's why your book is so important for everybody to read and share it with somebody, gift it to somebody as well. This kind of all started, not really started, but where you gained some traction. I believe it was what 2008 or so when you mailed your book to Gary Vitti, the head trainer of the Los Angeles Lakers, and you read it, called you the week after, brought you on. Could you just share that story and what it led to for you?
Yeah, so it was round about maybe 2010, 2011 that my husband was like, we need to make some noise here. And what in this country, if you're involved with sports, you matter. So
It's true.
so it was his idea to just like have me work with the sports team, and I was like, that's a dumb idea. You don't know what you're talking about, because I'm married to him. And I'm a terrible wife sometimes. So he did it anyway to help me. And yes, what happened was Gary read the book, and his number one on the totem pole, like just underneath him on the totem pole, Tim DeFrancesco, the head trainer, read it too. And they both were like, wow, this makes a lot of sense. They got on the phone with me. They asked me like a million questions over the course of like, it seemed like forever, probably an hour and a half. And they're like, well, when can you come down here and give us a talk and, teach us how to feed our players? And so I did that like a few weeks later, because I was in Napa Valley, California at the time, and LA was right around the corner. And so I went down there and I met all these amazing players: Steve Nash, Kobe Bryant, Dwight Howard, and Gary Vitti himself was a legend in the NBA. Tim DeFrancesco was just he's a brilliant trainer. And also, maybe most importantly, I met their chef, Sandra Padilla, who's still there. And she's an amazing chef. And she was like so glad that I was basically telling her she could do what she wanted to do, because Deep Nutrition was the book that they read. And Deep Nutrition celebrates chefs and their knowledge of how to make food taste good. Because when you're working with real ingredients and you make it taste really delicious, you are you're giving somebody a nourishing meal, right?
Yeah.
As long as you're not using like artificial flavorings and sugar and stuff like that, right? You're using all natural ingredients. And so she made the food like blow the players' minds. People would leave the Lakers and they would come back and they would say, this is the best food in the NBA, because she was working with real fats, real ingredients. We were getting grass-fed meat. We were getting just the best stuff. And they loved it. And so, but it was very difficult to control what they ate outside of like the training facility, right? So we worked with all that. We helped like the catering folks get the healthy food. I worked with some of the players one-on-one, like Steve Nash and Kobe Bryant. And those folks who stuck with the program, like they felt amazing. They was Chris came in as another one who like he went with the guys and they drove to a farm and bought a cow to
Wow.
share.
Wow.
And I did it because I wanted NBA players, these superstars that little kids look up to. I wanted them to be role models for nutrition. And they were, for the years that we got the publicity about that, they were. Because I heard stories from my son, didn't care what I fed him, but when he learned that Kobe Bryant was eating, I
Bone
forget what it
broth.
was, but bone broth and like some other kind of a meal of something that she'd been wanting him to eat, like more meat of some sort or other. He's like, I want that, right? So it worked. It worked. And, if they continued with it, and it wasn't easy, I think they would be dominating, right? But it's hard because what happened is Game Changers came out. I forget how long ago was that, like 4 or 5 years ago
Yeah,
now?
that was about 5 years ago. Yeah.
Right. And so Game Changers was about NBA players, their friends.
Mm.
And it was all like nonsense science. But what they did was they put the bunch of NBA players on a vegan diet and they looked at their blood before and after, and it got clearer,
Yeah.
right? Because there's less fat in it and less nutrition in it,
Mm-hmm.
right? But clear blood, they said that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And it convinced people, right? It's as simple as that. We're so easily convinced, right, by an image. So it's a challenge. It's a constant challenge.
Mm.
And why would there be such a push for veganism? Like, I've asked myself that question. I don't know what you think. What do you think is
I,
the answer?
do you know who Dr. Eric Berg is? Dr. Berg? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had this conversation with him a few months ago. He had reached out to me because we see a big push for the veganism. So I think, and he has the same thoughts, that there is an agenda for the entire population, not just America, but the entire population by 2030 to eat plant-based food that's engineered plant-based foods. And I think it's for control, because if people are not eating meat, they're not going to be able to think as efficiently and critically think, and it'll be easier to control them. So that is my cynical side of thinking about it. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, absolutely. They're definitely controlling what we purchase, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And I think a lot of it has to, I mean, I'm always a follow the money girl. Like, these vegan, vegetarian foods are cheaper to produce. You don't have to feed an animal. You don't have to keep it
Right.
refrigerated. You can refine the bejesus out of it so that it's just protein, pea protein. What even does that come from?
Right.
Right? Probably animal feed. Fiber. I know where that comes from. Corn husks.
Mm.
When they added fiber, so the dietitians give it the thumbs up. That's coming from trash, corn husks,
Corn husk,
right?
huh?
So,
I
so they're
didn't know
yeah.
that. My
I think it's
gosh.
because they want to turn trash into food.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I think. They want to turn byproducts of the animal feeding industry into food. But you know what? Charles Dickens said what you guys were talking about in his book Oliver Twist. So there's a book by Charles Dickens called Oliver Twist. It was made into a play, and Oliver Twist was an orphan at an orphanage, and they were perpetually hungry. And so Oliver Twist asked for more food, got kicked out. And what happened was the head marm said, "This boy is acting up. Have you been feeding him meat? Because
Wow.
that makes children very hard to control."
Wow. I got goosebumps. I didn't know that. I didn't know that story. Oh my gosh. Wow.
So, like, that is not that out there. That, in fact, the temperance movement, the whole temperance movement was also kind of about making people less unruly and easier to control. The temperance movement is related to the Adventist Church. The Adventist Church owns hundreds of hospital organizations. They around the country. The Adventist Church is strongly vegetarian, right? So these kind of confluences of circumstances that make evil rise to the surface is that, yes, they want to sell us cheap food. Sure, they don't mind controlling us. Sure, they like making money off of sick people. Lots of drugs out there. People like taking drugs because it seems like it's a solution to a problem that's really easy and instantaneous, especially when their doctor tells them that's what's going on
Mm.
here. So I don't know if you need to, like, invoke any big mastermind. It's just that it's a self-organizing system, right? Like, everyone's just following the path of least resistance, and that means cheap food, more processed food. People get sick. People figure out how to make profit, off of people being sick, right?
Yeah.
It's just, that's the nature of evil,
Yep.
is that it's the path of least resistance. It's hard to be good. It's not as easy to be good as it is to be evil, especially in today's society
Yeah.
on this planet right now. But good is way more powerful than evil, I believe.
Good will win as well. Good will win, especially with conversations like this. I always believe good will win. A couple of things here as we land this seed oil plane together. Uh, I was thinking of restaurants that I have personally vetted, like these chains that I have vetted that I will go to because they have been safe. And last time I checked, and this is always changing, so I encourage those to check as well with the updated version. But Five Guys burgers, by the way, they don't use any oils on their burgers. They grill them without any oil, and I just get it without the bun. So that's typically where I go when I'm like in a crunch. Um, there's Buffalo Wild Wings. They fry all of their wings in beef tallow. actually, which is super cool. At least the ones here in Miami. Again, it might be different locations and they always change things. So I always ask and find out. So those are a couple of chains that I tend to go if I'm in a pinch. I know it's not the highest quality beef or the highest quality chicken, but at least it's not being cooked in vegetable oil. Their Chipotle uses, I believe, rice bran oil. They use a seed oil. They use a bad oil. So people think Chipotle is healthy, but they're not. So beware. There's another company, I forget the name. I should have this in my notes. There's a type of oil out there that's a new type of oil that they're trying to get into restaurants. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Zero Acre
Zero
Farms?
Acre Farms. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so that is a very heat stable oil because it is an algae oil that they can pretty much dial in the fatty acid profile that they want. And while the company knows that monounsaturated fat is less heat stable than saturated fat, they also know the restaurant industry. And the restaurant industry right now really prefers that liquid oil for whatever reason. And also, it's just like the politically correct oil. It's kind of like, the Goldilocks and the Three Bears. It's the perfect temperature porridge.
Yeah.
Not too hot, full of polyunsaturates, not too cold, full of saturates. Monounsaturated is the answer. So yeah, and it's purely that stuff. Is it something that I'm going to say is healthy? No, because unfortunately it is refined and they don't have a lot of vitamins and minerals in it. But if a restaurant's using that instead of a seed oil, that is a better restaurant. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
that's
not
good
as
to
good as
know.
like French duck fat or whatever.
Yeah,
But
right, exactly. So would you classify the Zero Acre Farms oil in the same categorization as like a refined peanut oil? Would you put them around the same equality or are they
yeah,
different?
so refined peanut oil, I struggle to put in a category. I have three categories. I've got good, bad, and okay, but not great.
Yeah.
And so refined peanut oil, I'm really not clear on should I put it in okay, but not great, or actually bad. And I think it's going to vary by batch, honestly. It's just so it really
Yeah.
possibly should belong in bad.
And depending on how, like if it's the first time you're heating it, it's better than the second or third time. So it
For
depends on
sure.
how many times you're heating it too.
Absolutely. That's true with every oil.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so I would actually put it better than peanut oil for sure. I would put it kind of in the same category as like refined palm, refined coconut, refined.
The Zero Acre Farms is what you're referring to? Put
Yes,
into that
yes.
category? Okay, got
In
it.
that middle, okay, but not
And
great
unrefined peanut
category.
oil, you would put above all of those.
I would put them as more toxic than all of those unrefined peanut oil, but it still might be. I'm sorry,
Oh yeah,
unrefined.
unrefined is what
Sorry,
I meant.
brain fart.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, unrefined. That's
Okay,
healthy.
got it,
Yes.
got it. All right, last couple things here. I told you offline, I'm writing a new book called Metabolic Freedom. And the principle behind the book is metabolic flexibility, how the metabolism was built to use whatever substrate is available for energy. You mentioned that. And whether it's protein, fat, or carbs, whether it's body fat, hey, whether it's like sunlight and oxygen, like we're designed to use whatever substrate and produce energy and feel good. And unfortunately, 93% of Americans are metabolically inflexible. So the question for you, and I know one of the three answers here, what are the top three ways to achieve this metabolic freedom concept?
Well, yeah. So definitely get those vegetable oils
Number
out,
one.
right? And I would say 2 and 3 are do other things to improve your body's ability to control oxidative stress,
Mm,
to diminish oxidative stress. So that those other things can include specific things like, make sure you get enough protein, make sure that you are getting quality fats, and you only asked for 3, so those are probably my top 3.
yeah.
But I give you more actually in the third part, the last part of dark calories. I give you like I kind of walk you through what you need to know to really bolster your antioxidant, your body's antioxidant enzymes, and to be able to handle burning off of some of that high PUFA body fat that you do need to burn off in order to clear out the PUFA. The only way we can detox our body fat is to burn it off. There's no other shortcut. You can't like melt it out of you. It's just like any other fat. You've got to burn it off to get rid of it. So if you're going to do that, you need to kind of fortify your mitochondria with plenty of antioxidant capacity, antioxidant enzymes, and all that stuff. So,
It's good.
but I like to keep it focused on the root cause, and that means the solution is clear. The root cause is oxidative stress. Then all the solutions, you want to think about them in terms of how they're helping you mitigate oxidative stress.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Last question. I talk a lot about gratitude and I call it vitamin G because I believe it's so powerful. When you practice gratitude and feel gratitude, my shirt even says, vitamin G. It has a little supplement, but it's not a supplement you could buy. It's just something you experience, right? So I want to ask you, what are you grateful for? What do you have vitamin G for today, Dr. Kate?
Yeah, you can make your own vitamin G, right?
Yeah, yeah, in a second. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I mean, this is going to sound smarmy, but Ben, I'm really grateful for you and the fact that you get this stuff and you have this incredible ability to connect with an audience. And you have a huge audience that respects you and listens to you. And I'm sure that you are doing. I think that you're a big part of this shift that I've seen going from where I was just completely ignored to now they're trying to shut me down. Like somebody says, that you're over the target when they're shooting at you.
Mm.
And I think you helped.
Yeah,
For better, for worse.
yeah, exactly. No, I'm grateful to be a part of the mission. And you're right. You were a pioneer in this space. You were preaching this message before others that are preaching it. And thank God we have them out there. And you even gave them a shout out in the book, like Dr. Pompa, Dr. Canterbury, Saladino, Gustin, Dr. Augustine, and many others. We need all of us to collectively preach this message. It's that important. Hopefully, those watching and listening, you understand that. You will really get it when you read the book. If you enjoyed that chat, be sure to watch this next video with Dr. Philip Ovadia, a world-renowned heart surgeon, all about heart disease.
Heart disease remains the #1 killer by a pretty wide margin. It was sugar is causing heart disease, or it was dietary cholesterol and saturated fat is causing heart disease.